Welcome to the election process for the 2021-2022 APHA-ASP National Executive Committee. To challenge the national officer candidates' ability to think on their feet, the current APHA-ASP National Executive Committee has developed 3 predetermined thought questions for each of the candidates to answer. You will now hear from Sidrah Alam, candidate for office of National Member at Large from Shenandoah University. Sidrah, your first question is, what is one aspect of APHA-ASP as an organization, and how would you promote the utilization of this aspect to non-member student pharmacists?
Thank you, Juan. So for me, the biggest aspect of APHA that's most important and hits home for me would definitely be that family feeling, and which kind of goes into networking. And I think that's a big thing to encourage more members to join the organization. So when I first joined APHA ASP, I remember sitting, all by myself at the meeting, and our then president-elect came up to me. I didn't know she was president-elect. And she just started talking to me and started talking about APHA and all the great benefits. And I felt welcome in this organization, and I felt like it was going to be like home. And I continued that feeling when I went to my first MRM as a first-year student pharmacist, and everyone was so welcoming and encouraging and really spoke about all the benefits that the organization has. And I think for me, this was the organization that was home and family, or I guess family, as everyone likes to say. And I think to encourage future members to join the organization, it's really important to hit on how important networking is. I have met so many student pharmacists from around the country, being regional member, the previous Region 2 member at large, and it's been family ever since. This past year with the pandemic has definitely been difficult for everybody, and I definitely would not have been able to really succeed in my role as a regional officer without my other regional officers, which again goes back to that networking and family aspect of the organization. And I think especially with pharmacy, our goal of the profession is helping everybody and being that accessible provider. And APHA ASP has been that for me, where everyone has been accessible, everyone has been family. And so I definitely want to encourage, networking and how this organization is home for everybody.
Thank you, Sidrah. Your second question is, if elected, what would you bring to this position that will help promote growth in student pharmacists?
As the previous Region 2 member at large, especially during a pandemic and this new virtual world, I've learned a lot about communication, collaboration, and just being adaptable to the entire situation. So to bring growth to the organization, I think we really need to emphasize that communication and collaboration portion. We have a lot of resources in the organization that a lot of students aren't necessarily aware of, and the resources that would help them thrive. For example, as a member of the editorial advisory board for the Student Pharmacist magazine, there's so many opportunities for students to write and publish an article, and I think that's a great way for students to really see their potential as leaders. And that's one thing that as national member at large, I'm definitely going to focus in on, is having more students aware of all the opportunities we have, all the leadership positions there are, and just increasing that communication line between national, regional, and local officers, and just all the student members of APHA ASP. In terms of growing the organization, again, it goes back to that collaboration and communication, where as a national officer, I'm still an APHA ASP member. I'm still a student pharmacist. I'm literally like every other member of the organization, as well as the non-members that are considering joining. And I definitely want to encourage all students to think about how they want to communicate to communicate themselves to the profession. And a big part of that really is APHA ASP. As the biggest national organization, we really pride ourselves on student member engagement and the successes of student members. So I definitely think as a national member at large, I'm going to continue to encourage that engagement and more of a transparent line of communication between a national officer and a member of the organization.
Thank you, Sidrah. Your final question is, what would you say to a student who is struggling to be part of APHA ASP at their local chapter? And how would you promote the benefits of APHA to them?
When I actually at my white coat ceremony, the CEO of APHA at the time spoke, and at that time I didn't really understand how big of an organization APHA and APHA ASP was. But I remember him talking about all the differences that the organization makes on a national, international level. A lot of people don't realize that we do have that international representation, and we are the biggest, student national organization. And another important thing to remember is that students have such a big impact when they are a part of APHA ASP, which I didn't realize until I was a part of the organization. You hear all these acronyms of all the organizations, and it's confusing on which one to join. But being a part of APHA ASP, it's kind of caters to everybody. It's like a buffet where you have a little bit of everything and you really can taste a little bit of everything. And to that student who's struggling to decide whether or not they want to be a member, I think I would start just kind of talking about my story and how I started as a first year nervous student wanting to join the organization, and how someone reached out their hand. And that's what I want to be as national member at large, is to reach out my hand and be there for any member who, or any student who's considering joining the organization, has any questions, or even just wants to be more involved if they're already a member. It's really nerve-wracking being a first year student and deciding whether or not to join APHA ASP, especially I know one of our first meeting, we had the national president, Nimitz at the time, come speak to us and just talking about his APHA ASP journey. And it was really inspiring to me as a first year to hear all the amazing things he's done and where he ended up. And I wanted to be in a position like that. As a first year, I was like, wow, it would be really amazing to be able to run as a national officer one day. And the organization brings so many leadership opportunities, whether you want to be a national officer, a regional officer, or a local officer, or just a member and be involved in the organization. I learned that we don't have to be an officer per se to be very involved in APHA ASP, and every student pharmacist can make a difference in this organization no matter their title. And that's what I love about APHA ASP is you make a difference, whether towards other student pharmacists, towards the profession, and really towards patients, because APHA ASP really does focus on that patient care aspect. And that's such a great thing to be a part of as a student pharmacist, that you are directly impacting patient care, you are directly impacting advocacy and legislative, and you have such an impact whether you're a first year, second year, third year, fourth year student pharmacist. So all of these benefits is what makes this organization so great. And I think that I honestly wouldn't be the student pharmacist that I am today without APHA ASP, whether it's gaining friends, confidence, mentors through staff, and it's just a big family, as I say. And so that really is what APHA ASP is about.
Thank you, candidate Alam. This concludes the interview portion of the election process.